Good morning, Dr. Brad. Happy
Oh,
both have our cup of coffee. Brad started out with telling me a little parable about his life, and he immediately went off the deep end and on a deep topic before I could hit the record button. So
now
today
you
it's
before you could find it.
okay, fine. See, I have my.
Oh,
Thank you,
mine is in
Nathan.
my office. I don't
Uh,
have
so,
to
so he's
bring it.
ordering more of them. And I think they're going to be $10 or something because we got to cover shipping and that kind of stuff.
That's right.
But they're really quite nice. They're enamel, they're not cheap. And
That's
I just put it through the buttonhole in my collar. Anyway, so
but we
Brad
gotta
started.
we gotta we gotta mention that that's by the bling, right? Our
Yeah,
merchandising.
yeah, but it's sort of we're doing. We have a spot on the site, but he's doing all the work, so it's good. It's all he'll handle
That's
it all,
right.
right? So
That's right.
really what we'll be doing is saying, yeah, send your name, address, and whatever to pay this PayPal account for Nathan.
Okay.
He'll take care of it. So because this isn't a money thing for us, right?
That's
And
right.
right. So it's just we're not trying to raise money. We're just trying to create an identity for it. And I think the subtlety of this is
It's nice.
quite elegant.
So I
Um,
was just telling Curt
wait.
about
So I want to I got to say the date first. So it's this is a working session, a Saturday working session. It's Saturday, December 16th, 2023. But you have to remember that Saturday sessions are when Brad and I have a time to catch up. So the first part of the strategy session is usually us talking about thoughts we've had during the week. So that's Brad is going to go off on his what he's working on, which I find personally fascinating, and he's helped make me come accommodate is accommodate the right term or understand, right? Which is E. Michael Jones' uh, very Catholic Church view of history. But anyway, so now that I probably forgot, made you forget what the hell you were talking about.
you
Go
can't
ahead.
you can't do that. The I'm reading the book by E. Michael Jones, Logos Rising,
Yes.
and I find it to be a fascinating history of the construction of logos, which I will describe briefly for the audience. Logos being the implicate order of the universe, which human beings may discover and then rationally associate with. Otherwise, they're stuck in pathos,
And pathos being
path dependency, which is I felt like it, and
oh,
God made me
I
this way.
don't think I've ever heard it reduced that way before, but that's beautiful.
And so I'm reading the book, and I'm about a third of the way in, and he's describing the Roman Empire, and I placed a Twitter feed or X feed entry today on the subject of culture, and in Rome about the time 250 Diocletian. The Rome had insufficient culture in the realm of religion, which was local pagans. And the local pagans were insufficient because Rome was sufficiently cosmopolitan with increased travel and traffic between peoples.
Yes.
And so the Christians filled the void.
It was, yeah, just for the audience, cosmopolitan doesn't just mean in cities. That would be urban. It means that your society interacts with other societies. But anyway, go ahead.
But there was more social mobility as well, like physical mobility among the populace.
Hmm.
And right now I'm reading about the rise of ethnicity, which he says the generation of ethnicity about the same time, which is quite interesting and a novel phenomenon to me. So anyway, I wrote about it because it's like the condition is ripe for uh, improved articulation of the logos which we are providing,
Hmm.
and that is a novelty to me, which is like that's what we do. We provide improved operational understanding
Higher
for
resolution, higher resolution.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's what I'm on, and it's like the situation is ripe because the population is the cultural elites that we have now are similarly ignoring religion and seeking to crush it, it appears.
Okay, now that you've explained the causes, can you, what I heard you say is that given the complexity of the Roman upper classes and middle class, given their urbanization and trade, the little folk were retaining their paganism, right, as their social order, and their paganism is not sufficiently homogeneous,
That's correct.
right? So that it's insufficiently solving the problem of common values. Oh, I see.
Yes,
Now I know where you're going to go with this. Okay. Okay. So when you have so one of the principal purposes of religion is not only mindfulness, but it's mindfulness because the world is more predictable, and the world is more predictable because people have whether not agreed or not is probably not true, but they have a standard of weights and measures for the not only what exists in the universe, but the values attached to it. Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
And social values is among them, and it's like that. So the Christians provided a homogeneity of social values across the empire that empty void, it was void, vacant opportunity. A field of opportunity opened up.
Yes. Oh, I
And
see.
that's where
Well,
we,
and why? Okay, so now from the audience, now from the peasants' perspective, the women's, the peasants, the slaves, etc. Because remember, the European civilization is aristocratic. That's the stabilizing force, right? So from their perspective, what does this more homogeneous religion provide them?
but for the elites, it provides you're not worried about the new guy in town.
Right. And for the ordinary people, what benefit is it? No, well, no, what's their market demand
Market demand for the
for the
uh,
religion? Why did these organized religions sell so well?
and my understanding from E. Michael Jones would be that the local people benefited by the alms given to the church if they were poor,
Well,
and the value of being a civilian, the citizen, diminished significantly compared to the what it had been prior. So social status was more tied to other things and diminished from being a civilian, and that's where the ethnicities came in.
yeah, I would say that that the 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 way the historians generally explain it is that it started out as a religion of the hearth, which is where women would make meals, and this was the basis of why the emphasis on the what is it, the apostles sitting around having a table,
Yes.
right? And that once this religion started to develop priests, it became useful for an elites to take advantage of the formation. And so they developed a religious elite that was able to systematically improve the religion over time. Improve is a questionable word, but make it more homogeneous, regulate it, keep it similar, etc. And so that they developed a new elite. But I'm not, I would disagree in the sense that it was more advantageous. It was just that it eliminated the conflict between the aristocracy, conquerors, because that's what they were, and the little people, which was the conquered. And so when the conquered people now had their own elites, right? Not the aristocracy owning them or demanding from them, or but they had their own elites representing them and advocating for them. So just as in the Enlightenment era, or the beginning of the Enlightenment era, which would be somewhere around the 1200s. Just as in that period, we saw the beginning of Enlightenment, the way they saw the beginning of Roman law spreading out. our people found liberation was necessary for the middle class, and that was achieved through reading in the academy and all those other things. Whereas in the ancient world, you had the need for the same inclusion of the lower classes. So religion produced an institution for the lower classes, the way commerce and trade produced an institution, and the common law really provide an institution for the merchant, the middle classes, just as military discipline and at least in the West, the prohibition on centralized authority uh, helped create the aristocracy. So what we're seeing, and this is important in the context of our work, because of course what we're seeing is actually the introduction of people not into a social and economic, just in a social and economic, but also into the the different classes out of the past. And women are now members of economic classes, but that they are engaged in politics, which they've been out of before. So in these four eras, right, the aristocratic era, the religious era, and the commercial era, and now in the feminine era, we've added means by which people can be integrated into a hierarchy where each has motives, incentives, values, and virtues that can be identified and slowly codified into a system of weights and measures. And so what we're facing, our work is the problem of we need to regulate females' antisocial behavior as much as we have regulated antisocial behavior in the other groups that have been slowly included in the system. So I wanted to make a broader explanation than either the traditional historians or the economic historians, which is the ones I generally am quoting, or the Christian and especially Catholic historians like E. Michael Jones. This isn't to say he's wrong. It's to say he's giving a correct but partial explanation of the issue. Anyway, I hope I did okay with that. Tell me if that arc made
Okay
sense.
with that. The issue that I would bring up is that it created an opportunity for the lower classes to trade with the upper classes in
Yes,
Rome, and
yes,
it was based on morality
yeah.
and ethics. So
So
they
all that's that it meant that, let's flip it around. The morality is necessary for all trade. What it meant is that these people now had something to trade,
That's
which
right.
was their productivity and their behavior,
That's right.
because conquering and regulating people as serfs and slaves is unprofitable compared to enfranchising people who adopt your moral code. So yes, I didn't want to get to. I don't want to have any implication that the church is the origin of morality. The
I'm
church
not
is the.
suggesting that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
know
saying
you.
that.
I know you weren't. I'm afraid the audience will interpret that because that's where they go to. That's where everybody goes to first.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I understand that, and it's like, yes, there we have it. So it's homogenization of the moral framework, and then empowering that with the elites that were generated by it.
So think of it this way: is that religion makes the underclass necessary, I mean, possible to integrate into the aristocratic civilizations, right? That's what it does. You can actually cooperate now because regardless of your class, you have a standard of weights and measures. All you have a difference is influence, but that's a positiva. In the negativa, you're equally prohibited from all these things, at least mostly equally prohibited from these things, and just that the punishments might be different. All right. So so then when we get to where we're wealthier, we see the emergence of a middle class. Then we have the same problem with the middle class. But the problem every time is everybody's shifting upward. So there's this problem of even the aristocracy had to develop a new ethics, right? In
Yeah,
response to the Enlightenment, you had to get a Frederick, right? You had to
yes,
get in response to the world wars, the British aristocracy had to upgrade their ethics. So everybody has to upgrade their ethics when a new group comes in. It's more that there's a continuous shift as we move people onto the move a very steep climb of people. In other words, many poor people and a very few rich people. As we flatten this line and then we turn it into a bell curve, right? We need a system of a universal system of measurement to cooperate on those levels. And of course, at present, we're introducing the feminine, and it's turned out to be the least responsible ethic we've ever faced. So it's causing us an extraordinary amount of harm. Anyway, so and I feel like I ran with your beautiful insights there to provide context so that I could show that Michael Jones is correct, right? His explanation is correct. In my view, it's insufficient, but it's not incorrect, right? And that when you say we provide higher resolution of the same criteria, that's what we're doing. We're providing higher resolution, but it's not a conflict. And I think
Now,
that's what you've helped me understand.
right, and furthermore, this is quite interesting, is that what this work is showing to me is that the current situation that we face now is analogous to the time of Diocletian in Rome, in which there is a vacuum that seeks better resolution of that logos,
Yes.
which we provide.
Yes.
And we are uniquely situated to provide it.
Yes.
At the opportunity, as the opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That was my insight.
I was thinking of something Rudyard said. I think it was yesterday. I had a rough day yesterday.
I'm sorry.
I was fine for the staff meeting and immediately crashed afterwards. I slept all fucking day, all night. Rudyard said something is that the Christians aren't Christian. And then he listed all the costs, the positive costs Christians should bear, right? Which is the positiva of charity and,
Right.
forgiveness and universalism. And I'm wrestling with this in a little part of my subconscious over here the minute I wrote it. And it's related to the problem you're bringing out, which is the topic you're bringing out. Excuse me. I use the word problem all the time because what I mean is context or topic or something like that. Question.
Yes.
Is that, yeah, but we forego huge numbers of opportunities to impose costs on others indirectly. So in the past, you would have greater charity, but it was possible to impose many costs. In other words, you would have to pay these direct costs of consideration, care, and universalism, and this, excessively feminine, submissive optimism, which is a kind of baiting into non-hazard in the Christian world, right? It's the solution to the prisoner's dilemma. If I excessively cooperate with you, you will eventually find it's more useful to cooperate with me and mine than others, right? So it's baiting into a non-hazard, right? Or it's baiting into a good. But what I see as this is the same, sort of like the opposite of what is his name, Better Angels of Our Natures by Pinker. He's claiming, but he's got the feminine thing in his head, so you can't take Pinker seriously anymore. So, he's Jewish, so of course he's got the feminine thing in his head. So does that, why does that, I guess that's offensive.
That's not offensive.
It's like saying the sky is blue. I don't know why it's offensive. It's like, is the sky blue?
I'm not acting offended.
No, I just think it's just funny.
Sky is blue today.
Yeah, the sky's blue today. So his measurement, however, is correct in that we're less physically violent and we're less physically criminal, but we're more indirectly criminal because it can be possible to be more indirectly criminal.
But
But
I have to
like the
argue with
financial sector.
pronouns there because it's we. It's there is an increased opportunity for criminality.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the correction. So we have made we well I don't know how to do it without we because people are actors, right? Anyway, you correct
Right.
me
So
on
people, go ahead.
so the people are in our here. Let me flip it around, flip it back again. Then in our pursuit of suppressing um, in direct harms, right, and suppressing physical harm and theft, right? We have not sufficiently produced, we have produced institutions, organizations, and systems that facilitate indirect methods of harm and theft. And
Yes.
so just as I said, when we were thinking of religion, we're shifting people of, shifting people, not just lifting people, but shifting people up a set of moral demands in order for the increasing number of classes to cooperate. When you're talking about the what was I just talking about? Um, the the shit, I lost my train of thought because I went down the religious thing again.
Systems for
Oh yeah,
criminality.
so we develop institutions and systems. We develop formal and informal and habitual systems, and these allow indirect theft, like the financial sector, the government, and all this other
Rent-seeking
nonsense.
opportunities.
We just manufacturing rent-seeking opportunities. By the way, so it's not so Pinker's wrong. We aren't. We're decreasing violence, and we're decreasing physical theft. But most of our assets aren't physical anymore. They're promissory, right? They're promises, debts and things like that. Um, and they're all based on agreements. So what happens and opportunities that are generated from those things rather than fixed capital like agrarian farm equipment and land and animals. And so we're in this position where there's actually more theft and more harm going on,
Yeah.
right? But it's just more indirect and less and more difficult to suppress, which is what we work on, is the suppression of the use of institutions, whether informal or formal, to conduct these thefts and harms by indirection and largely, usually over a longer period of time. So, I hope I've made that point. There is that they're just that 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 there's the angels of our better angels of our nature is not true, right? People in the world are better off, so they have less incentive for short-term harms to others, to gain short-term gains by short-term harms. But they have more incentives to do long-term gains by long-term harms by others indirectly. So directly versus indirectly. And so that's why we're in this position we're in, is that the number of thefts going on. I mean, what's immigrant? Every immigrant who is not a productive, immediate productive competitor is, and who is not immediately seeking full, what do you call it? Not full non-inclusion. How do you say it? What do you say? Conformity to a regular. When you immigrate,
Okay.
you become conform. You conform to their integration. Thank you. When people do not integrate fully, every act of non-integration they have is imposing a cost on others, which is decreasing the cultural, the traditional, excuse me, the informational, behavioral, habitual, normative, traditional, and informal institutional capital, which is forcing the formal institutional capital to be harmed as well. So these immigrants are huge fucking cost. I mean, the Italians were a huge cost. I mean, I'm in New England, and of course I love them, but the Irish were a huge cost that was durable. It's still durable, right? But they eventually got far enough. The Italians were a huge cost. That cost is, some of it's been durable, but most of it hasn't been. It's survived. The pre-war Jews, which were mostly Germans, right? They weren't a problem here, right? they had almost fully immigrated, like I tell my friends, the Lippies, who had the Christmas tree. The difference was it had 6 points on the star, a minority, right? And they celebrated both holidays, right? So, or but the post-war Jews were hostiles and remain hostiles, and we're slowly integrating them. But the damage they've caused to the country is greater than the damage that was caused to the region by the Italians or the Irish. Although you can tell I mean, if you're here, you can tell the difference, and it's pretty easy. Um, so the problem with the Muslims is the problem with the Jews is they undermined our institutions in order so they didn't have to fully integrate, and the Muslims actively oppose our institutions and try to overthrow them. So these things are real costs that we bear, and we're paying huge costs. The difference is we're so wealthy now that it's like boiling the frog, that these costs take so much time to manifest that we don't perceive them. And that's exactly what the left counts on through incrementalism. It's also the problem with conservatism is conservatives think the other way around. We need to fix this right now and fix it permanently, right? And probably overdo it, right? With some sort of force. The thing is that's great, but unless you fix the institutional framework so that it's prohibited these things, we don't. And it turns out that the law is actually the fastest engineering method by which to produce change. It's not what the conservatives think. It's actually the
No.
law. The law will produce the incentives to use the systems that exist to prosecute these people who are misbehaving. So, sorry. My faculties are continue to return, and so the levels of pattern and indirection continue to return. So I want to thank you for not only assisting in making those faculties return, which you have been invaluable in, but that now you have to endure the increase in the number and depth of arcs I make to tie subjects together. And
All I
so
do,
I thank you for
I
your
want you to know
service,
how I do
and I
it.
thank you for your patience.
I will tell you how I do it. This is quite interesting. I do it like this. It's like, they want to hear what you have to say, Curt. They're not here to listen to me curate you.
I think that one of the reasons we have been successful together is you uh, adequately represent the view of smart people,
Why, thank you.
right? And so I can talk to you, and in the act of trying to be clear with you, which you force me gently to do, gently, just endlessly, is that you force me to make things accessible to at least the smart folks, whether we get it down to the ordinary folks or not. I believe I mean, you try it all the time, right? Certainly Luke and Noah and
It'll work.
the other guy, Michael. Well, Michael's more like me, right? Michael's up here in the fucking stratosphere, worried about the foundations of
The sky's
mathematics.
not blue up there, is it?
Right? No, it's actually really fucking dark out there in space. So, and then Martin, of course, he's the master of reducing it to something an interested party can understand. Brandon's a little bit like me, me and Michael, and that he always jumps to the fucking end conclusion. And it's like, I have that kind of stuff in my head, but I realize nobody's going to see the lily pads
Right.
to get from A to Z, right? I mean,
That's right.
we haven't seen much of our two young guys. And I think I understand why that might be. It might be harder for young guys to get this stuff. But Gabriel and Jacob are fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
We had to get rid of the one guy who turned out to be crazy. Um, but
Right.
well,
No need.
no need to name. No need to name. But our young guys are quite capable too. So, and then if I can't, Walther doesn't want to have his. I mean, there's a bunch of the guys that want to preserve their anonymity, but they're
Right.
just as good. They can make the claims. Anyway,
Sure.
so you have this our collaboration is very powerful in making this stuff understandable, because generally if we can come up with the terminology, you and I agree on the terminology and the definitions of that terminology, we can usually produce arcs, right? And it's these arcs that are, it's like people think we're doing. I said the simplicity of our method is so stupid that it's just incomprehensible that it could be that stupid. But we simply use enumeration, adversarial competition, organization, right, into a spectrum consisting of a system of measurement, right? That it has to have at least 3 points, right? That's all we do, right? Everything we do is
Right.
disambiguation by enumeration, serialization, operationalization into a system of measurement, right? Well, then we go and we take these measurements and we do it across time and across cultures, right? And across circumstances, and we make these arcs. Now, you and I have talked about this as something we're going to put in the we're going to try to capture these arcs and put them in the but there's not always that many. I mean,
No, there's not very
right,
many.
they're not. I mean, you can talk about this size, this much of it, or you can talk about this much of it, or you can talk about this arc relating to this arc relating to this arc relating to this arc. But it's like our principles, right? There just aren't that many fundamental arcs. It seems like you just need, it's why I like working with Rudyard is he has the historical knowledge
Yes.
to understand the arcs without having to explain all the historical knowledge. So it is true that this knowledge of, I mean, you're very widely read. You have to have this knowledge of something. It's got usually history. And then you have to have a bias for the sciences. And then you have to have a little bit of disagreeableness. Little bit. That's probably an understatement.
Some.
Because then if you're disagreeable, you're not enticed into the good instead of the true, right? We do the true and then the good, but they just stop at the good, right? And
That's an interesting function, which is it satisfies their need. It satisfies their need to move. The good satisfies their need sufficiently, so they're attracted to it, and their agreeableness stops them because they presume that this is the presumption, in my estimation, is that the presumption is the thing that we're doing is immeasurable and undoable, so they can't do it because they presume that it cannot be done, therefore they cannot do it.
well, and they presume it can't be done because it would involve conflict. So remember they're always trying to avoid responsibility, and which we take as empathizing, but it's actually responsibility evasion. And so empathizing is when you pay a personal cost to provide someone care, but they mostly can't systematize because their empathizing interferes with their ability to look for true first and good second. And that usually means they don't even want to think about the true if it's bad. Whereas we can look at the true if it's bad and say, okay, how do we accommodate this? So these are fascinating crossovers between the feminine and the masculine. Is that the masculine sees these problems through systematizing, but tries desperately to solve them by action instead of systematizing, and the left sees problems as emotional.
Ah,
In the short term, the feminine see the problem as emotional experiential, and they use incrementalism to get there. And what's fascinating is you achieve the goal by the opposite group strategy, which is just, yet it's not possible to think that way, right? So you actually need the adversarial competition. This is like our pyramid again. You need the adversarial competition to provide both the computation and the incentive for resolution to discover the stable equilibrium that moves forward. And the problem, of course, is making sure that a market exists between the two stable equilibrium. Well, the two forces in order to discover the stable equilibrium. The problem, of course, is we have men are bell curve distributed, but almost always favor responsibility, while women are much narrowly distributed and they favor irresponsibility. So it's the first group of people we've brought into the polity that actually are genetically and cognitively hostile to civilization. And we mean civilization, production of institutions and systems that that discover, accumulate, and maintain capital. And then it's your fault my faculties are back, and I'm doing this. Right? You can't blame me.
I like that. That was like pseudo responsibility avoidance. I like it.
Oh, it's just because everybody knows it's bullshit. I mean, that's why it's fun. And I accuse you things that aren't true. And,
That's good.
And we all laugh about it because we know it's bullshit. It's part of the joke. Anyway, all right. So you're pretty high on Dr.
Dr. Jones.
Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones.
I think, see, I look at it the way I'm framing it right now is so see, Jesus solved the problem of religion.
Which is brilliant. Yes, I understand.
But, it's true. And Dr. Jones is solving the problem of philosophy, which is the integration of religion into rational thought.
And we solve the problem.
And historical understanding in a philosophical framework. He's finishing the job.
Yeah, I think this is way more profound, especially the fact that, you said it, I recognized it immediately, but until you said it, it never would have occurred to me that Jesus was the end point of religion. Well,
but what's interesting is there's a transduction process because it takes hundreds of years for that to filter into the general public.
Yeah, but I mean, so does Darwin. I mean, there's still people who don't believe in evolution. So I was watching a couple of Christians the other day, just laughing about it like it was impossible, and I'm like, it's deterministic, as long as they're
temperature. That's interesting. So, dude, he talks about this in this Logos Rising, Professor Jones, because he's like, you cannot get something from nothing. Okay, so it's like this, what he's making, the evolutionary process that he doesn't articulate because he hasn't been versed in the science.
Right, he doesn't
know. That he doesn't understand that all the precursors are laid in as capitalization, which suddenly occurs as an opportunity that is exploited by whatever it is. So yes. In the case of the eye, all the precursors are laid up and then suddenly an eye can appear.
Yes.
So nothing comes from nothing is part of what he says, and he understands that, and he's explaining it as best he can in the philosophical framework from which he works. Right. But he doesn't have the science to make it.
The problem is that means there's always been something. Right.
Well, in
that problem, we don't actually understand the word always. It could be that time is a product. What we understand
that. We understand
the product, not a cause, right?
That we do not state that which we do not understand in the science.
Yep.
And we call it God if we talk about it.
Yes.
Because that's how we talk about that which is beyond our understanding.
Exactly. Not complicated.
So it's like, but I'm reading it and it's like he's spot on philosophy, talking about the science from a philosophical perspective.
Yes, but I have to catch up to you. I mean, the few chapters I've read in the scan of the book I've looked at, I mean, it looks like he's pretty much got it. But I mean, again, I had somebody push back on me again. I haven't answered it yet, but I said, well, reason exists. You don't need philosophy to reason. You just need to reason. Philosophy is something else. It says it's a system of thought. Reasoning is just something humans intrinsically are capable of. So right. You say, I don't need philosophy to do science. I only need reason to do science. Now he would say that this, you could push back and forth this, but my point is that even if you want to claim there's a hierarchy, it's an evolutionary hierarchy, not a dependency. In other words, science isn't dependent upon philosophy.
That's right.
It's dependent upon it's depending on the foundations of science. If you want to call the foundation science a philosophy, that would be one thing. But the criteria for determining a philosophy is different from the criteria for science. So science is a separate thing, right? Because you don't deal with this. You don't judge things in science by the same criteria you judge them in philosophy, which is basically contradiction, non-contradiction, justification.
Right.
You do it the opposite, which is construction, first principle reducibility, first principles causality, and constructability, but as evident and the evidence that operational description is correct. And so you are talking about the difference between the mental and the behavioral um, and the existential. And so I always think it's funny when somebody accuses me of this, and I'm like, I think the people in my mind, I'm like, that's pretty stupid. But these people have been brought up to think that everything is philosophy, when philosophy
Well, now
actually,
we understand each other, and I would make the statement that philosophy rests upon the foundation of reasonability,
yes,
and that is a standard. It is
yes,
not. It is a standard for people that share your values,
yes,
and it is insular. And philosophies will be divergent between groups that don't share values.
right,
So it's not unifying and not universal, which is the difference.
right. So this is why I say, you want to. There's logic, right? Which is there's logic, and then there's language, and then there's theology or religion, which is based on um, uh, anthropomorphic narratives. There's
Yep.
philosophy, which is based on rational judgments, or basically it's linguistics, and then you have science. Excuse me. You have the bridge between science and excuse me, philosophy is, I'm trying to figure, there's three ways of explaining this. I just want to say there's science, and then under science, there's the logics. And the problem is, where do the logics go in there? Well, I actually said where they go. They go down here with language and logic, and then philosophy. It's not this kind of arc. It's a tree, right? And so now once you have these precursors, you have this distribution that's available to you. But the point here is that we only think of in terms of myth, religion. Mythology is probably right. Myth and religion, um, philosophy, science without operationalism. We don't think about science and philosophy and mythology and anthropomorphism and embodiment. We don't see that resulted in the highest resolution possible,
Right.
which is constructability.
Which is, I'm going to correct Curt a little bit here, which
Please.
is when we say we, when he says we in that context, he means humanity, I think.
Yes.
Whereas we here at the Natural Law Institute
Oh, yes. Okay.
actually do.
Yes, we do that. Yes.
That's what we do, which is the highest possible resolution of articulation.
It's possible by me.
And
I always wonder,
we
you
have to
always,
find that. And that's like, that's what the opportunity is here, which is we have the highest resolution possible of logics, languages, and grammars for all human operations possible.
and I think that, and I was working on this, what was it? The night before last. Um, the you can't. I've said this. We say this, but it doesn't seem to stick. Any new knowledge we have about the universe will not change the everything from mass upward. In other words, there's from what we understand about the universe, it would change our understanding of the universe. And it might change our values because, for example, what if we know the universe is going to die in 6 million years instead of I can't remember what the number is, but it's a very long number. It's a long time to heat death, right?
Yeah.
It's even a long time before all the stars are far enough away that we can't see that the sky is black, except for, I mean, it's a long time, right? So, um, so we might change our value system then, because humanity could come pretty nihilistic if it turns out that there is no infinity uh, to march forward into. There's only so many billion years or million years that we can move forward into it. It's probably trillions, but I mean, so that can change. So, but if that we would have to learn. This is what we would have to learn. We would have to learn something really weird like this, which is that at the level of the quantum background, which is our current maximum resolution on the existence of the universe, right? Like I've said, they say there's 11 dimensions. Well, they don't. I get this shit with mathematics and physics drives me nuts. You could say that there's more likely at least two levels below the quantum background that we need to understand. And this is incredibly weird, tiny, really fast, really, stuff that is,
Strange. It's strange.
it's strange because we can't look at it, right? I mean, in terms of what, from the photons perspective, right? We're like, we're not even on slow speed. We might as well be a static picture, right? That's
Oh
not
yeah.
moving, right? But you go down to the quantum background and the rate at which that thing is moving, which, I can visualize, but I don't know if I can pull the numbers up off the top of my head. But
Right.
that fucking boiling bunch of, head,
Nearly nothing.
yeah, but there's a lot going on in that nearly bubbling set of nothing trying to resolve. Well, that means there's something underneath that
Boiling it.
boiling that is doing this. And if the math is any indication, I'm not saying it is, or I believe it is. I'm just saying that it's all I have to work with. That
Right.
would mean there's another layer beneath whatever is going on there. So, you know, what's her name is out with a new video this morning. I love her, the German woman.
Phyllis, the scientist,
Yes.
the physicist.
Anyway, her name's escaping me. I don't know why. I mean, I absolutely adore her. Um, is that she's talking about the problem of complexity. I'm like, there's no problem of complexity. It's a problem of mathematics. All mathematics is statistical, which requires us to measure variations over time. Whereas if you get down to this level, we can't see anything to measure, and we're beyond the boundaries of mathematics. We're into the place where, you'd have to know what operationally was going on. We sort of get operationally what's going on at the quantum background level, at least to like the way you can look at a pot of water and say it's boiling, right? We can see that it's boiling, right?
Right.
But what the fuck is boiling,
Right.
right? And we can call, so, and then you're like, well, okay, well, you got a boiling water. Now you've got to go down to, well, it's this oxygen, hydrogen
Right.
fucking thing, right, going on. And so, okay, well, then if the universe is boiling, the background is boiling, and it's not boiling into one thing, right? It's boiling into multiple things that can't seem to resolve into a stable relation like a photon, right? Below that, there's something, right? And it would suggest that below that, just like there's hydrogen and oxygen, right? Below water, there's hydrogen. There's something down there. So I
I
mean,
think there's a turtle down there, Curt.
right, exactly. That's the point I'm trying to get to. It's like we know that turtles all the way down turns out to be false, except that there still might be a shitload of turtles.
I know. I know.
So we're sitting here with this, and I'm like, well, I mean, they're prisoners of mathematics because they don't understand the grammars, right? They don't understand the grammars. They're prisoners of mathematics, and that's become their gold standard. Except it's not the gold standard operational computation, or in other words, operationalism is
Oh,
the
so they're counting the angels on the heads of a pin.
no, I mean, it's only slightly better because they're counting things like that they call particles and protoparticles. And we know that some of these things, like quarks, that's false, right? Not sure I can do it off the top of my head, but protons, neutrons, making quarks, whatever. Well, and so so we know all this stuff. It's just it's a failure to understand mathematics, just like you were bringing up. It's a failure to understand philosophy. It's a failure to understand science. It's right. They don't understand. They understand mathematics, which is actually part of science, but they don't understand computability because of operationalism. So there are the problem of using the wrong tools to solve a problem, and the only way you can do that is to theorize because we can't inspect. So what they're doing is they're theorizing with a tool, mathematics, that can't that lacks of necessity lacks the information necessary to cause to produce a theory that could be physics instead of mathematics,
which is operational.
Which is operation.
So they cannot produce operationalism. Right. So it's there you have it.
So it's just, we're doing our thing, right? We're trying to make that jump from science to operationalism, just as he's trying to make the finishing philosophy.
And he finishes philosophy by tying it down religion.
Right. And we are.
So he's finishing the work of Aquinas in philosophy.
Yes.
Right, which is a natural dovetails with the science that we produce.
All right,
the problem of science, I have to say this. The problem is this dualism that got introduced, which is the dissociation of morality from materialism.
Yes.
Which is operational science.
Yeah.
They didn't, because they couldn't incorporate it. So we're closing that. We're adding morality and ethics back to the material by the completion of the science, which includes human nature. So we're finishing natural law as the operationalism necessary to make empirically the closure or reattachment of the materialist with the spiritual function or the moral, which was not possible in empirical terms until we complete the science.
Correct. Which is, again, grammars of increasing resolution from the anthropomorphic to the least anthropomorphic. Although I think what he says with logos and the way you define it and the question I've left myself open to ask you at the end of this conversation is well, it has to be reducible to human sense perception, something we can distinguish by sense perception. So when you say the logos, I'm curious, is it in the Platonic sense that these patterns exist out there in some way, or is it in the cognitive science sense that these are patterns that exist that we recognize as humans? And I'm not sure where the logo sits there, or is it the imagination that man fabricates because he has identified those patterns?
It's discovery of patterns in the world, okay, which is the implicate order as it corresponds. So we would call it correspondence of logics, languages, and grammars to the material implicate order.
Yes. So I'm trying to disambiguate it. So there's the order that's there. There's the patterns we recognize. That's intuition, right? There's the narrative we construct of language and logics, right? That result from it. And there's somewhere in there. No, that's probably some intuition. No, there's imagination, which is something we hold in our heads. And then the language, logics, and grammars. So when I hear the word logos,
yes,
I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Right, and that's kind of where I'm at with Dr. Jones's work, because it's like he's working on this history of logos, and it's like, what exactly is logos? And I'm like, okay, I'm 200 pages in or 250 pages in, and I'm going, I think I'm getting clarity, because he draws it in, and I'm not trained as a Catholic, so he draws it into the construction of the Trinity.
That's an interesting way. Why would he do that?
Because what's causing all this and generating the order that we're discovering? There's a cause and a motive and a energy and a order that's created. And then there's our recognition of it. I will report to you while you're doing some research that
I'm just asking.
Dr. Jones has followed me on the X feed, which I thought was interesting.
You know, we should ask him if he'd be willing to do a chapter by chapter
Oh, that would be wonderful.
interview. How many chapters in the book? It's a lot. It's a
There's
more than,
about 16.
okay, so that's normal for us.
I think he would enjoy that.
Logos is used to denote a very specific and central concept as the Word of God. In the Gospel of John, Logos is identified with Christ.
Yes.
It was the beginning of, was the word Logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Logos is Jesus, and the word Logos became flesh and dwelt among us. That still makes sense. So when you say the word, that means a reasoning entity.
Yes.
Okay, so it's like most theological concepts. It intentionally conflates into a mythic framework. Okay, Logos is seen as the agent through which God created the universe. So God spoke the universe into existence. And to speak the universe into existence requires a mind that reasons.
Right.
Because it must have memory, it must have prediction, it must have agency
Intention.
and intention and speech. So um, the Logos is a concept that bridges the understanding of God, creation, and redemption. It is fundamental in explaining the relationship between Christ and God the Father and understanding the nature of Christ's incarnation and his role in salvation. Okay, in summary, Catholic literature and theology, Logos, the word, is a profound concept that encompasses the divine rational principle of the universe, the creative power of God as personified in Jesus Christ, as the incarnate work. Yeah, okay. So, um, Jesus exists. Um, the universe exists because of uh, of the rational choice of God. And since we are rational, we can understand the universe through Jesus and through the evidence of the godliness. Okay, I get it. All right.
I think it will be a very interesting set of conversations, to be honest.
I would, I was, it'd be good to have him do that because, we've already I've got Noah and we got Luke done. I've got Noah done, but I would really like this one. I've talked to Roberto about doing his, and he's resistant, but I think it's mostly because his facility with spoken English is heavily accented.
Uh,
I'm pretty sure Kevin won't do it. Um, the others have tried to review it, and I can't. I can, I wouldn't like to do it. I would like to do it with Kevin McDonald, but I have a hard time seeing him have the patience to do 16 or whatever chapters.
right.
And I wish I had done Lynn before he died. It's always like these guys, as soon as I get to where I want to interview them, they die. What the hell is going on?
It's not meant to be.
It's not meant to be. All right. We're just supposed to be frustrated. All right.
No, no, that's just an option.
That's an option. All
You
right.
you may choose to exercise it at will. It's just like futures.
Jesus, that's horrible. All right. I'm going to refill my coffee.
Oh, how about that?
So I'm going to stop the recording for a moment while I refill my coffee.
Right.